5.5 million barrels a day of refining capacity for our oil, for heavy crude oil. And out of at the global level, there's 10 million barrels a day of global, and that includes the Americans. So altogether, there's 10 million barrels a day of refining capacity for heavy crude. So 5.5 million of them are in the United States. That means there's only 4.5 million in the rest of the world. And they have suppliers. I mean, Saudi Arabia and Iran and Brazil. And I mean, there are other countries that produce heavy oil. So does this mean that Alberta is just going to show up with a ship, a tanker full of heavy crude, and China will go, oh, let me write you a check? Where are the customers? Is Alberta crude competitive? Somebody ought to sharpen their pencil. And now I had Chris Reagan, who's a professor of economics at McGill, on my show today. And we were talking about this, and he said, well, it's not up to the government to make this decision. Let the private sector do it. And my response was, it has already been argued that the private sector doesn't want to build pipelines. There are no pipeline projects. They've said, we don't want to build oil pipelines. So if you want an oil pipeline, the government is going to have to come to the table and either de-risk it for the private sector, which means subsidize, or it's going to have to do like they did with Trans Mountain expansion and build it all themselves. So as soon as public money is involved in building a pipeline, now it's our business, right? Those are our tax dollars. And we should be able to say to these companies, show us the math. Because when I go have either of you ever been to your bank manager and you've gone in with a business loan? Requesting a business loan, you bring in your business plan, you do your financial projections, and you have to. And what do you do? He sits there and he says, Markham, okay, what are the assumptions behind your financial projections? What are the risk factors of you not making those? What happens if you assume you're going to make X amount of revenue? What happens if you don't? What happens if the economy goes into a recession? What happens if this? What happens if that? So if I want a $10,000 loan for my business in a bank manager, I get more due diligence than an oil company or a pipeline company.